In recent years, school choice has become a growing issue among parents. In our shifting education landscape, some parents are turning away from public schools while others remain staunch advocates of traditional public education. But is it really just an either-or discussion? And how can our school systems serve all students, regardless of need and ability? This is what I want to know.
It's a shame it took a pandemic to open so many folks' eyes to the need for school choice, but what COVID did was it forced every single parent across the country to look at what their kids were learning and how their kids were learning, and it forced them to do that all at the same time, which has never happened before. You've never had a singular moment where every parent has been forced to pay attention to their kids' education at the same time. And so parents did, and in some cases, they were even more appreciative of what their kids' teachers were doing. I know that teachers worked incredibly hard under incredibly difficult circumstances during COVID. In other cases, parents said, I can see why this works in a traditional bricks and mortar setting for my child, but this emergency remote learning is just not what my child will benefit from. Other families looked at their children's learning and realized there wasn't enough learning going on. And so what I think every family realized, whether or not they were happy with their child's school, thought they did a decent enough job coping with the challenges, or completely dissatisfied, families wanted or wished they at least had something else from which to choose, even if they were happy. And so that resulted in families understanding for the first time, in many cases, that school choice was the way that more communities need to go. And they stood up, they spoke out, and lawmakers listened. And in just the last 12 months, in just the last year, 20 states have expanded school choice and educational freedom in some way, shape, or form. In some places like New York, the expansion was relatively small, but still important, allowing for more charter schools. In other states like Iowa, Florida, and Arkansas, the expansions were bigger, giving families almost universal access to every type of school out there. And so we are seeing a fundamental transformation of education in this country, and that transformation is focused around giving families more and better options.
How we dealt with individuals with disabilities in the past and how the programs have changed and all this stuff. And one thing that really stuck with me from this training was how we as a nation shifted from a system-centered approach to people with disabilities to a person-centered approach. So instead of saying, oh, well, your child has Down syndrome, they're going to go live in this institution, they're going to be taught these skills, and then they're going to have this job and they're going to live in this group home. Now, when we address disability, we go to that individual because it doesn't matter if they have the same disability as someone else. They're still an individual. They have their own wants, needs, desires. We're seeing them as a person and we're treating them and their lives holistically. But I think we need to start making that change with education. And obviously, that's a much bigger institution. It's a much bigger system. It's going to take time. The road is going to be long. But we have to start making that shift from seeing it just as the public school system and doing what the school needs and what the school wants and focusing on this to how are our approaches, how is our education actually meeting the needs of children at individual levels, And I think when we start doing that, we're going to see a better educated populace. We're going to have more needs met of these individuals because they're children now, but they're going to be adults. They're going to be running our country later. They're going to be taking care of us later. And those that have had their needs met and have had an education that has been fulfilling and successful and has given them the opportunities to attain things that they could not have attained otherwise, we're going to be in a better place for it.
I think that's the most important thing, is to kind of get a sense of your child and what it is that you value, kind of what you're expecting out of school. I think different parents have different experiences that way. If you can visit the school, talk to other parents who are there, read the reviews that we have. They're a vibrant set of experiences from other parents. I think those are important things. And then I think there's a lot of things that are important to understand. How does a school teach reading if you're in elementary school, right? We're learning a lot more about that and understanding kind of the variety of ways kids are learning. And those are things not always captured in data. So try to get a sense of that. What are the other experiences that you want for your kid? I know at the height, I could find a school that I personally valued schools that were a little noisier and a little louder. And that's kind of what I love, because that's sort of how I loved classroom. And I find parents who really like calm, quiet places. And you find those in different in different ways by talking to people and by visiting the school. And I think that's just an important thing to understand.
Well, and come on, John. I mean, how they teach math. I mean, that's important too, right?
I mean, I don't want to default to math as the most important, Kevin, but you and I both know.
No one is working with both sides. The teachers fear the parents fear the teachers. The administrators, quite frankly, are just trying to keep things going, right? And nobody is really preparing teachers today on how to work with parents. Like, as much as I had a great relationship, I thought with my son's teacher, I had a different one moving forward. Yeah. And it was a much more celebrated one.
Yeah, and it was productive.
It was productive for my son.
Yeah, and how do we bridge that gap, especially at a time when, political tensions are at all-time high. We are in an us versus them, mindset culturally. Folks are overly sensitive, some with justifications, but still people feel like the other guy or the other person is out to get them. And in schools in particular, especially schools that have had challenges making sure that all kids get what they deserve academically, folks are on edge. But the work that you did, and talk about starting at Bayo and putting together the blueprint for what I think was the best parent engagement relationship with teachers piece in the country. Talk about that and then lead us to where you are now.
Well, I appreciate. Thank you for saying that. Well, first of all, there are just three things when you're talking to parents, and helping parents understand why. Like, why are you in this school? Why are you sending your child here? Why do you want a different option? Helping parents connect to their why. And that's to anybody. Whenever I'm even talking to a minister, I want to know why. What is your why? Because if you understand your why, you understand it. I mean, tell me, but technically you need to know, because you need to know why you are sending your child to that school. Because that is what's going to keep you sending that child to that school. It's going to keep you embracing that school. It's going to keep you asking the right questions of that school. So helping parents understand their why. When I was at Bayo, that was one of the main focuses. The second thing was telling everybody, sharing all the information up front. Gone are the days that we treat people like they can't handle the truth. And it's okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I was and still is, I believe that if you share all the information, like treat parents like, I don't know, like they're adults, like they're professionals, like they, it's their children. And the third thing is answer all their questions.
The long story short is I think there's on a good day, maybe miscomprehension between parents and schools, and on a bad day, hostility. And that is not a public school thing. I think that's an education thing. I don't have data in front of me, but I think there is data to show that teachers at large have fairly low expectations of parents. And I think, from the reform perspective, one of the real achievements of the ed reform movement is it's just become absolutely unthinkable to hold low expectations of kids of color but we sure as hell have not given up those low expectations of parents. You know, in other words, the soft bigotry of low expectations has not gone away. It's just found a different surface to adhere to. That's an ongoing problem. But it does call on all of us to have, I think, a slightly more sober, thoughtful, please calm conversation about our expectations of American education.
Yeah, and this is not just a hopeful statement. I agree with much of what you said. I do think that for all the bloodiness out there post-COVID, all the angst we're going through with parents, that at the end of the day, this is the dark before the light. I really believe that there will be a settling out period where we will focus on what children need as opposed to what systems need to do better. Thanks for listening to What I Want to Know. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app so you can explore other episodes and dive into our discussions on the future of education. And write a review of the show. I also encourage you to join the conversation and let me know what you want to know using hashtag WIWTK on social media. That's hashtag WIWTK. For more information on Stride and online education, visit stridelearning.com. I'm your host, Kevin P. Chavous. Thank you for joining What I Want to Know.